Hey guys, welcome back for another episode. And today we've got the Carolina Hurricanes, the year that was and the year that's coming in 2023, 2024. So last season for the Canes, they finished second overall in the NHL, 113 points and 52 wins. Another solid outing by the Canes, and it was carried pretty much by their defensive effort, finishing second in goals against and second on the PK. With just another, yeah, as I said, solid showing defensively. Got probably one of the best, if not the best, defensive units in the league, and that's even with some questionable goaltending at times. And yeah, pulled himself through to another playoffs appearance, and they met the New York Islanders in the first round, beating them in 6 games. It seemed a pretty tight affair in that first one, but they get the job done relatively easily still. It was a weird one. It seemed like they did it relatively easy, but it was also pretty tight. And then they go to the round two, second round against the Devils, and this one, well, that wasn't even tight. They did that with absolute ease. Even though the game they did lose, they got absolutely hammered. They basically hammered the Devils in the other 4 games, 3 of the 4 games, with the last one going into overtime. But that was it for the Canes. It all came crashing down from there, and it's weird to say, but they got swept in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Florida Panthers in what was real controversial because obviously head coach turns around and goes, well, it wasn't really a sweeping, but you kind of got swept. But you do understand what he meant. They lost every game by a goal. It was that tight of an affair. I don't think I've ever seen a sweeping as close as that. So I understand what he's saying, but mate, you still got swept. Sorry. And yeah, unfortunately for Canes fans, you got knocked out in the Eastern Conference Finals and swept in the Eastern Conference Finals yet again for the second year in a row. And that is all she wrote after a very promising season where, it'd have to be said, a lot of people thought they would be the team in that Stanley Cup Finals if it wasn't Boston, especially once Boston got kicked out. It was definitely Canes as favourites and potentially even favourites to win the cup, but it wasn't to be. Um, and now we move on to next season. So I'm going to hand you off to Jaden to run you through the 2023-24 projected lineups.
Alrighty. So we just got under a million free in salary cap. Starting off in the forward lines, you got Bunting brought in via free agency. Then you got Aho and Jarvis on first. Svechnikov, Kokoniemi, and Nietzsche's. Martinuk, Stoll, and Fast. Nason, Drury, and Teravainen. So that rounds out your forward line. Defenders, like Nick said, one of the best defensive cores in the game. You got Orlov, who's been brought in. Burns, Shea, Pesci, Slavin, and D'Angelo also brought in. Goalies, you got Anderson and Ranta from last season, still going strong. Scratchers, Lemieux, Chatfield, and Jones. Lemieux and Jones been brought in via free agency as well. So no trades, but a few additions via free agency. Notable losses: Rizzo, Dahan, Gostisbehere, Casey, Lagerson, Lejeune, McEakin, Pacioretty, and Storchenko. So a few notable losses. That's why they've had to go out through free agency and replace a few, like Shane Gostisbehere, but nothing too huge. Especially like a Pacioretty, that was more of a risky contract in a sense. Yeah, what do you say? It's hard to look at this team as the favorites, as everyone does. It's either them or the Devils at the moment, but they haven't really addressed their issues with goal scoring. They've just what looks like enhanced and kept steady their defensive side of things. And they had the best second best PK, the second best goals against per game. Goals for they were 15th, and power play was 20th. So you can see where they had issues, but I don't know if they're going to address it anywhere further throughout the season, or if they're going to have to rely on just a healthy side like Svechnikov not getting injured during the playoffs. But What do you think? Can they fix their goal scoring woes just with the same lineup?
Oh, look, they obviously bring in Michael Bunting. Yeah, he can score goals, but again, he's a 20 goal scorer. They probably needed a 30 goal scorer to come in. That's obviously why they were after Timo Meyer at the deadline along with the Devils last season. Um, yeah, look, I still think these guys can be something. I mean, Teravainen had a pretty down season as well as being injured as well. So if he can bounce back, there's some potential to put on some extra goals through him. You've got Marty Nietzsche's, who is really only just hitting his straps, and I expect him to go even further as well. Svechnikov, 23 goals in 64 games. You're probably saying he gets to 30 plus if he's healthy. Um, so it's I get it. They don't have an out and out sniper, and I still don't think they have an out and out sniper, even with Bunting coming on board. But I still think that they've got a very strong side. I think their defense is is what's going to hold them in good stead as well. And Dmitry Orlov coming into this team, I can tell you right now. Um, I know they lost Ghost and Dahan, but he's Orlov's a fantastic defender. So this defensive core just gets even stronger. And you got D'Angelo on that third line. But again, D'Angelo, we've all seen what he can do and the power he's got when he was in Carolina the last time. So he had 42 points in 70 games last season, and um, I feel like this team is going to build off that blue line, um, and they got stronger in their key area. Anderson and Ranter again, if they can have a solid season like they did last season, it is my concern area with them. Um, Even though they were okay last season, Anderson was still a 903 save percentage in what is meant to be pretty much the best defensive core in the league. So I know they don't concede a lot of shots, and that can hurt sometimes, but I feel like Anderson he can leak those goals. And if he didn't have such a solid defensive core in front of him, it might be a bit uglier. But I still expect these guys to be, top two in the Metro, relatively high up in the overall rankings in the NHL
Mm,
standings, and bar meeting the Devils in round two again, um, I dare say that they're gonna get through the first round and potentially get to another Eastern Conference final. Albeit that it's going to be hard to get through the Devils, and although they did it last season, I
mm.
think that if those two teams met in the second round again, it would be an absolute cracker rather than the lackluster sort of series we got the season just gone. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
one of those things. I can see this team winning a cup. I think they've got the defense to do it. Um, that defense helps that goaltending, and that goaltending can stand up from time to time. They've got a reasonably good forward lineup. They just missed that sniper, but I feel like with that defense, you don't need to be putting up 6 goals a game to win. Um, and it's why they get to the Eastern Conference Finals. There's just something about the Eastern Conference Finals that
Mm.
caused them to choke. It's not like they got blown out by Florida. They just Florida just out defense the best defensive unit in the
No,
league.
it's just a
Basically.
run. That's all it really was that Florida went on.
Yeah.
It's not like you can't really rely on that every season. You'll get always like maybe a dark horse doing something. But obviously Florida outperformed compared to where they were doing during the regular season, and Carolina took it to them every game. There was no blowouts or anything like that, so honestly could have been roles reversed and Carolina swept Florida. It was that easy. It's hard with this team because they're at the salary cap. They've They brought in Orlov for 2 years. You got Bunting for 3 years. Um, but it's just hard to say like they've solved the issues that they had last season. It looks like maybe they've shored up their defense, maybe even further with Orlov. But it's even if you can, if you can do that. But like they received the least amount of shots against last season, so they were first in the league at shots against by a fair margin as well. So if that's not repeatable, or if it gets worse slightly, how much worse does their record get? Like they did have the second best PK in goals against, and they had I think equal fourth best for shorthanded goals. So they have a really good um, fast moving PK that really closes the ice and space and allows you to get those breakaways. And that's how they play their game overall. They just close the space really quickly. You got Seth Jarvis, who's just going to probably keep getting better. Um, and probably, hopefully, break that 20 goal mark this year. But I just don't see, unless it's like some internal improvement from a player just doing something, getting extra 20 goals compared to where they normally should. I just don't see where they're getting the goals from. They got so many playmakers of fast players that are small bodied, Ahos, Vechnikov, and whatnot, that it's hard to see where that big body sniper is that's going to score you 30, 40 goals off these playmakers. And that's what worries me. You've mentioned the goaltending as well. That's what worries me as well. I'm not fully sold on Anderson. I know Ranta can do it. He was doing it really good playoffs and regular season, but I just don't know at this moment that they can repeat and go to the Stanley Cup. They've got the experience now. Like they've got what 5 years or something like that of pretty much deep playoff runs, and generally once you do that, eventually it clicks. You get that Stanley Cup, and then that's it. But like with how this roster's filled out, you've probably got 1 to 2 years left. That's your timeline. It's 1 to 2 years, and then it's done. Just for how you got Brent Bird's going up, like your whole decor's gone. In
Mm.
by 2025, that's your whole decor gone. A lot of your forward line is gone, though you got some Jarvis and Nietzsche's RFAs, so that is good, some young depth. But then both your goalies are gone, all your scratches are gone. So it's looking like they got basically 2 years left. And I don't like the Brendan Lemieux addition. I don't think that's the type of player that they needed. I know playoffs is different and whatnot, but I feel like they just need a different style player for a scratch, even if it's a goal
Yeah.
scorer. But yeah, I just don't think they addressed what the issues were last season. New Jersey did with the Timo Meyer thing, and I feel like that's why I just edge New Jersey better in the offseason anyway than the Canes.
And they obviously picked up Tyler Toffoli as well, which it just adds to their goal scoring. But yeah, look, it's hard because I know goal scoring was this big thing that everyone was talking about for the Carolina Hurricanes last year, but the only thing that stopped these guys from potentially winning a cup was an insane Florida run where they've just gone smacked like beaten Boston on just a record-breaking season after just scraping into the playoffs, beating the Leafs after finally getting out of the first round, and then going and beating the Canes, who everyone was like, yeah, well, these guys are definitely going to the Stanley Cup final. So it's hard because they beat the Islanders pretty easily, in my opinion, even though it's six. They beat the Devils easily. Um, whether or not that's the wild card for me is whether or not the Devils can surpass the Canes, and that's where it would worry me for the Canes that could potentially be the reason this team doesn't win a cup is because a younger team comes through and knocks them off the rungs before they get one. But even without that goal scoring, I can still see this team winning a cup because they've shown year on year out that they can get to the Eastern Conference Finals. There's just something there that's holding them back come the finals. And I don't think it's goal scoring. I know, one goal, one goal, one goal. I just and maybe it's not goal scoring, but maybe it's clutch. I guess you could say. Um,
Yeah.
even though to get them to the Eastern Conference Finals, they have a lot of clutch moments. But once they get to the Eastern Conference Finals, like they just can't. They just don't seem to be able to get those clutch moments. And does a sniper change that? Does a Timo Meyer, like who was the big sorted out one last year, would someone like that change that in an Eastern Conference final? I don't know. Maybe it's the next level of Seth Jarvis. Maybe it's the next level of Marty Natures. You got to remember that these guys are still quite young. Um, Natures is what, 23, Jarvis is 21, so they've still got a lot of development to do. I mean, even Shevchnikov is 23. This whole side is pretty young across the board. So I agree with you that their window is only open for another couple of years because of that aging defense, and especially once Brent Burns obviously hangs up the boots, well, hangs up the skates. It's Yeah, for me, I still think that these guys are gonna be one of the favorites, and I can see them getting a cup. I think this is probably the season for them to do it. They've got to be quick because eventually, unless of course something happens to the Devils and they, shit the bed and all the rest of that, and just for some
Mm.
reason start going backwards. But you've also got the young teams like Ottawa, Buffalo, Detroit coming through. Um, so, there's some really, really solid young teams coming through in this conference. Um, so they'd want to be quick with it.
Yeah.
I feel like
Uh,
this season or next, they've got to get it done.
I feel
Do
like
we see
I
a
feel like
trade?
it's got to be this season just because of how stronger some other teams are getting. Buffalo's on the rise, Ottawa's on the rise, Detroit's on the rise, New Jersey. Like, it's hard to see the further this goes that they're going to be beating those teams that are just getting better and better. Especially when like some of their kids keep coming through the system. But it's
Their
just one of the
forwards get better. Their
yeah.
forwards will continue to get better because they're young. It's
Yeah, yeah.
the
And they've got a
defense
lot of
that,
experience really young as well,
yeah.
which helps. But
Mm.
my issue is that when you really think about it, they got two holes, and that's goaltending and goal scoring. And honestly, like really out of the three, like their defense covers a lot of the issues that this team has, and it's just because they play such a fast game defensively that they're hard to take the puck off, and their their style of in the zone attacking of just shoot the puck doesn't matter where you are. It a lot of the times it doesn't really work. They'll have 40, 50 shots but only have two goals or something like that. So it's good to pepper the net, but you need players that can just, what, I'm going to score. And that's what Brady Kachuk did. That's what other players in the playoffs did, is this just went, I'm going to score. And it's hard to see who those players are at this moment. Sure, they've got amazing players in Aho and Svechnikov, but a lot of the time they're playmakers and they need that sniper. So I feel like this team's got two holes compared to a lot of other teams, and that's why it's harder for me to go. They're 100% going to win the Stanley Cup this year.
Yeah, and I get that. It is obviously going to be a question mark, but I guess I put this to you. Is it potentially a coaching issue? You spoke about the just shooting from anywhere and peppering the net. Do they need to be smarter with it? Because you talk about the playmakers that they have. That's not playmaking. If you're just shooting from
Mm.
anywhere and hoping for the best, that's not playmaking. You're not setting up an ability. Anyone can just fucking have a shot from anywhere. Like just pass this guy the puck and he shoots it at the net and hopes for the best.
I think it comes down to coaching, but also comes down to like system. They want to play like this really tight defensive game that in a lot of cases where a player maybe on like Toronto's team or someone where they got more freedom just to play make and go, like even though you're like fourth or last man, they make a play around it around a defender. I don't see that too much with the Canes. A lot of the time it's a lot of they get it up the point and then it's just shot in to ensure that they maintain that pressure. And it's good. it can work and everything like that. But where you see some teams that have really high goal scoring, it's because they allow that freedom a little bit more, that those playmakers make those plays. And I think it could be down to just they want to play that defensive side, and that's the thing. The defense covers the lack of goal scoring and it covers their goaltending. But
But
if
it
it's
could
you got
actually lead to the
yeah,
lack of goal scoring too, when you think about it. Like,
exactly. That's my point. Is that it's like a double edged sword, and the thing about it is like you've got teams that 31 teams that had a whole off season to study their play. That if they start decoding their defense in the way they play and they start finding holes, their greatest strength is no longer there. I don't see how they compensate for the goaltending and the forward offense. Like the goaltending is not horrible, but it definitely has holes at times. It's kind of
yeah,
in similar case to New Jersey's at the moment, where it's not horrible, but it has its flaws, and
questionable.
that's the worry about both of them. That's probably why they both should probably go around getting a Halibut, just for that Hail Mary one season wonder. But obviously this team salary cap strapped at the moment, so it'd have to be something like you're trading a Frederick Anderson and then Winnipeg retain half the salary if you would ever do something crazy like that. But yeah, I just think they need to solve one of the two problems, either the goaltending and it could just be internal. Ranta or someone just has a good, or Anderson just has a good season, or they need to fix the goal scoring either through player or different system offensively. And
Yeah, well,
I don't think they're going to change it offensively. That's the thing.
I don't know how you get another player in with this team. Then like you're looking at they've got no cap.
Yeah, well, they
Um,
just brought in Orlov just for under 8 mil, so
well, exactly.
that's what eats it.
So the only real way to do this is if you were to turn around and go, all right, let's get rid of a. Can't even pull one off the top of my head. Like, you know,
You probably got what a Teravainen. That's probably the just because of the season he had last. That's the only thing.
yeah, yeah. Do you try and ship off a Teravainen to someone? But yeah, like he's a good player, but he is a UFA, so maybe it is a Teravainen. Do you look to ship a Teravainen off to try and pull in a goal, like a goal scorer, an out and out sniper that's going to give you 30 goals?
Mm.
But when do you do that? When do you make that decision? Because I feel like if they were going to do something like that, they would have done it by now. Because
Yeah.
I don't think,
Well, it could be something like that. At an injured Patrick Kane. I know he's going to miss like a month or something like that at the start of the season, but maybe they add someone crazy like that, who would be
maybe.
on a cheaper contract, and you may not have to. Maybe he signs a 900,000 just to get the cup. I don't know what his salary requirements asking are, but maybe that's someone they could go for that could help shore it up. But obviously, with that player like that comes with the defensive woes of a player like that. And this team just relies so much on that defensive system that I don't know they would go for a player like that. Um,
Yeah, does he fit that system because they are so
mm.
defensively sound? Um, but yeah, you've got to do something different, right? Like you
Well,
get
I just don't
swept in
think
the Eastern
Bunting's the
Conference
solution up
Finals.
forward. Bunting, Lemieux
Oh
are not the
no,
solution. So
no, no, 100%. But um, yeah, I'm looking at it and going, you lose the last two Eastern Conference Finals in a row, you get swept. You've got to change something, right? Like you're obviously getting there, so you're doing something right, but something's going extremely wrong when you get there. So what is that? And I like the Orlov and D'Angelo. I think Orlov's a little bit overpaid in terms of what he got. But he is a fantastic defender, obviously. The Bunting one is interesting. I know he's a 20 goal scorer and he will probably produce that again, but he does, as Toronto fans could probably attest to this. He has his dumb moments of stupidity, which could also cost Carolina, and you really don't want a player like that costing you come playoffs. but yeah, what else do you do? I still think these guys can do it. I think they've got the team, but
I
for
think they got the
me,
team, but
it comes from more of a coaching structure and a coaching change than actual personnel. Because unless you're going to get rid of Teravainen, like we said, for and try and go out and get a sniper, I just don't see where that sniper's going to come from. So for me, it's got to be a coaching change.
well, that's the hardest thing. And when you say change, it doesn't mean change coach, but like change the
No,
system that
no, no.
they're
Yeah,
playing. I'm
change.
just clarifying for other viewers.
Yeah,
Let us
yeah,
know in the
yeah.
comments what you think you would change, if it is the system, or a player. Obviously, they got Jarvis and Nietzsche's that have to be re-signed next year, and depending how that goes, that could be costly increase, and that's a Teravainen's contract eaten up just right there, and those renewals. So their team, in a sense, will only get worse a little bit. So if they do bring in a sniper, it probably will be someone like a Kane or something like that. That is just a 1 year rental in a sense. So yeah, I can see how this team could develop internally. You know, they've got so much experience under the belt, great leadership. That's through this with Stoll, Burns. Um, I'd even throw Aho and Svechnikov in there at this point, even though they're young. It's just, and Anderson and Ranter are decent people and good goalies in themselves. They're not horrible, but you're talking about winning the cup, and you kind of need excellence. And they got excellent forwards. They got excellent defenders. I don't see the excellence in the goaltending, and honestly, I don't see the excellence too much in the scratches either. So when someone like a Svechnikov or anything goes down, I don't see any of that being replaced at all, and that is the worry. If you do lose another Svechnikov or Aho or someone during injury during the playoffs, which is pretty common, um, I don't see any replacement that's going to replace any of that type of production. So yeah, it's hard. They just keep on doing it. They play an amazing system. Um, Hard for teams to decode because of how fast it is and how in the face they are. With closing the gap, but I just think you got to solve one of the two problems. I think you can ride the Anderson Ranter, and I would just be focusing on the offense. And I don't know if Brindamore has said he's changing anything in the offensive side of things, in regards to the structure or the way they're going to do it. But I feel like something has to just a little bit, uh, especially with the power play. With Aho, Svechnikov, Brent Burns, and whatnot. That power play should be top 15, in my opinion, just because of those players in itself. Then you got Jarvis, Nietzsche's, Kokiniemi, etc. So yeah, I think it starts with starts with the offense, starts with fixing the power play just a little bit. It wasn't horrible, just slightly under 20%. But yes, those are my biggest issues because I can rely on Anderson and Ranter as the duo. You got basically 5 million there, and Vegas did it with Hill. You got Colorado did it with Thingo Mijigo, who went to Washington. Forgetting his name right now. Kemper,
Kemper,
was it? Yeah, Kemper.
Kemper, yeah.
Yeah. Um, so it's proving that you don't need the Vasilevskis or anything like that, but you still need the forwards to score the goals, and that's just the biggest thing. When it comes to playoffs, we know it gets harder to score as well. So if you already have a goal scoring problem, it's just going to exacerbate that.
Yeah, and I think the big one is the back-to-back Eastern Cup. It's it's not back-to-back. It wasn't the season before, but the last two. I should clarify. The last two Eastern Conference Finals that the Carolina Hurricanes have been in, they have been swept and beaten quite convincingly. So I
A
I
little bit of
feel
a
like
mental
they've
game going on there.
yeah, I feel like it's not just about getting fixing that goal score. I feel like there's going to be a bit of mental game to it as well. Come if they do make the Eastern Conference Final again, I think someone say that it's not just the last two recent ones. They actually had the last time before that they made the Eastern Conference Finals. They got swept as well. Um,
I'm not sure.
I,
Actually, I haven't looked into that history.
I'd have to check, but I heard something about the last three. Um, last three conference finals that they got swept in. Um, but yeah, I'd have to actually check that out and see if that
Mm.
is true. But yeah, if it is true and they have been swept in the last three Eastern Conference finals, then you've definitely got to be asking, yeah, okay, conference finals got swept by the Penguins in 08, 09.
Well, I mean, they won
So
they won the title that year, didn't they? The Penguins. That was the
Pens,
Crosby's first.
yeah,
So I mean, like, not that bad
yeah,
of a sweep, but I understand how it
no,
can loom over your head as a fan, and
hmm
give you a little bit of worries in regards to that. But
well,
it it,
yeah,
it's something that you know, it's more of a fan base because the teams change so often that a lot of the players aren't the same from the seasons before. And so, like, there was the other one that was in 2019, wasn't it? That they lost in the conference final or something like that. So the team's changed since then, and so a lot of the people that might have that mental block weren't even here for it. But so that is a pro, but it is obviously on the fan base. The management that's still there would obviously be experiencing that as well. But I don't know. I know playoffs, like, they change the rules and stuff, and it becomes a more physical game. And they've brought in all of D'Angelo, Bunting, and Lemieux, and even Jones. And obviously Lemieux's that more physical person, but I just don't rely on that man to stay out of the penalty
I
box in the
yeah,
playoffs, and that's my problem with him. So
yeah,
I understand what they've done. I think Bunting is a good ad. There's nothing against Bunting. 4.5 million for Bunting. I'm fine with that. Especially for 3 years as well, which is like kind of your window. But yeah, I just need to see that one more addition. And sad that Orlov's eaten a lot of the salary cap there for adding someone on the forward line. And yeah, I would have to say that if you were to do anything, it would have to be Teravainen, just because of the contract, UFA, get the most out of bang for buck. Otherwise, you're destroying your defense and getting, like, moving a Shea or a Pesci or something like that, which you wouldn't really want to do. So yeah, I can't. I think they're done. In regards to their roster, I don't think there's going to be anything crazy coming forward unless there's some big trades, but I don't think there will be. And I think this is the roster you got going forward to at least the trade deadline. And like we said, top two in the Metro, no matter what, making the playoffs. I probably can't see them getting kicked out in the first round, even if, yeah, depending who they come up against. The only team I could see is probably the New Jersey Devils, um, if they came up against each other. But I probably see them going to another conference final or round two at minimum. Um, but they're probably your favorite besides New Jersey to win the cup again. So two Eastern teams probably your favorite, and then you're probably looking at a Dallas or someone else on the Western side of things. So, and I feel like they can defeat a Dallas or any of the Western teams. Maybe besides a Vegas on how good they played in the playoffs. And yeah, no, I think it's very worrying as a fan. You got 1 to 2 years left out of this roster to do it. You got a lot of the core that still remains, but it feels like that's your window. And if you make the conference finals again, I would be a little bit worried of losing the first two games and just going, no, it's happening
oh,
again.
even even just losing the first game in the conference final, I think is scary.
Mm.
The crazy thing about this team is that the defense is gonna dissipate over the next couple of years. Brent Burns 38, Orlov's 32, which is one of the reasons why I don't like that 7.7 mil contract. He's come off a 5.1 mil contract with the Capitals. And I get he's a good defender, but he's 32 years old and you've just thrown 7.7 mil his way. I feel like, if you're going to give him a pay rise, maybe six, and then you bank that 1.7. So a little bit disappointed in that, but let's see what he does. He might, completely just turn their defensive core up a whole nother level, which would just be insane. Um, but yeah, you're going to see their defense sort of dissipate and just go away eventually. But you're gonna see most of this forward group, unless of course, they lose them to UFA status and stuff. You're gonna see this forward core for quite some time. So I'd
Mm.
be very interested to see if this team right now doesn't win a cup in the next 2 years, maybe three. If once the defense goes and they have to leave that defensive structure behind because maybe they don't have the defensive pieces to play that style of game, if maybe that changes their mentality a little bit and allows this forward pack to actually play their style and play in a different way, and that actually leads them to a cup. That would be, it's several years down the track, and we'd have to wait and see. But that's one thing that I'd be interested with this Canes team because that could be what holds this dynasty a little bit longer. Is if they can, if that forward pack sort of takes over as the defensive core, slowly ages out, and then they have to change their mentality to more of a forward game. We're starting to see the NHL. It's going to a faster paced game where it's all out offense. You look at the teams like Edmonton, Toronto, New Jersey, like even the likes of like Buffalo and that, they're playing this real fast-paced north-south game. So, um, yeah, it's just something that I just noticed. I'm like, okay, they're gonna lose all their decor at some stage over the next few years, but that forward core, that top nine, is pretty much locked
Yeah, it is pretty much
for a
locked. Yeah.
while. Right? Like you look at it, like they've got some serious Aho 2032, Kokanyemi 2030, Stoll to 2027, Svechnikov to 29. You got Jarvis and Nietzsche's who are going to be signed as RFAs probably long term. The only one at risk at the moment really is Teravainen and
Mm.
Martinuk. Like, but that's two pieces that you could even still re-sign. So I don't know. I just something to put out. It's something for down the line, but maybe let's, track back to this video in 4 or 5 years' time and see where Carolina is at and see if their whole game plan's changed and it's been restructured to one of the more
Mm.
potent teams in the league. It would be just interesting to see because it could be their defensive structure could be what's holding this team back. Um,
Mm.
and,
Well,
and
that's the big
sometimes,
question. If they don't win next, like this year, do you do a coaching change? Does Brindamore lose his role? He got the Jack Adams in 2021. He has a good, amazing regular season thing, but is basically 500 when it comes to playoffs. So I think 32 wins, 31 losses. Um, so does that force your hand with Brindamore? Like I think he's been great, but if you fail again, is it kind of one of those, well, we're in it to the cup and anything else but cup is fail. So like I said, uh, defensive side of things amazing, but clearly they got offensive woes, goaltending issues, especially with the defense that's in front of them. Um, and at some point you got to look at Brenda Moore and go, no, it's a great team and everything you're doing, but you keep failing when it gets to the ends, and maybe
that's
we
right.
need we need the change there. So I'll be interested to see if they ever do that. I think he's been really great, and it'd be really hard to do that. And he was with the Canes, you know, 2010 and
Oh,
earlier,
what?
before that. But this is basically, I think, his only head coaching role since 2018, and always played playoffs, which is great. Only lost in the first round once, and that was to Boston in 2019, 2020. Every other time it's second round conference, but at this point it's cup or bust for this team, and that's just the pressure they've got on their backs. That's the pressure that Brendan Moore's got, and you just got to win it. Really, that's every season. That's the point of the season, right? So they just got to win it now.
Oh, look, he's won the cup with them. He's their Stanley Cup captain.
Mm.
In what was it, 05, 06. So the man obviously knows how to win a cup as a player. Um, Now I guess it's just can he learn to win a cup as a coach? Um, so yeah, look, I still think he's a man for the job. I know he got a lot of hate for that. We didn't get swept statement, but
No, I
I
back
think
him 100% on that.
exactly. I think we can all agree that he's got some substance in that. Like, what, as I stated at the start of the video, how many times, I don't think I've ever seen it, have you seen a team get swept in an Eastern Conference final by one goal every single game?
Mm.
So your goal difference was four at the end of that series. Like, I don't think you've ever seen that. Like,
Even
you
but
know,
on ice though, they weren't destroyed. Like when you hear sweep, you're like, oh,
no.
they got obliterated. Like, but they weren't. They weren't obliterated. They were in every single game. Um, even without the scoreboard, just the on ice production using your eyes. So yeah, that's just that's just the thing, isn't it? And I back him 100% on that. So anyone that says bad things about him for that is a bit of a numpty for me.
I think they were just having a laugh at obviously the fact that, you
Yeah,
get swept and your statement's that. But yeah, like I was looking at it and going, "Man, I kind of agree with him in a sense. Like, it, it's not a normal sweeping. Like, I think against Boston, they in 18-19, they got swept. Like they got messed up. I think they lost by what, 3-4 goals every game or something like that. So they got swept. But the series against Florida, like that wasn't. It's a sweep, but like it's an unlucky sweep because just a little deflection of a puck the other way, like it's a 4-1 series, or it's as you said earlier, sweep their way. That's sort of the series it was. It was something that that yes, they got swept, but it literally could have gone the other way. So it's this thing that I also hold out hope for as well. That for a Canes fan, like I know again it's another sweeping in a conference final, but it was kind of like a freak thing. Like, who the hell thought the Florida Panthers were going to even make the playoffs, let alone make the Stanley Cup final, go on a run they did? Um, and you just kind of feel like, okay, if that was a different team, the Canes probably get through because they're not coming up against a team
I,
that's
I
just.
think even if they had Svechnikov, they'd get through the playoffs. But they
Well,
were a
he
bit.
came back, didn't he? He was back in
Yeah,
there.
but I don't feel like he was like you missed so much game time. You kind of
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know what I'm
yeah.
saying? Like I understand like other players are playing through injury, but they're still in the momentum of it all. Momentum's a
Was
huge thing, so I think
Oh
that
no,
was a big one.
sorry, it must have been Teravainen that came back.
Oh, it was a
Svechnikov
Teravainen that
didn't
came back.
play. It
Ah,
was
that's right.
Teravainen that came back. Yeah, I
Yeah,
knew one
yeah,
of
yeah,
them
that's right.
came back.
Yeah, no, I got
Um,
them mixed up as well. Um, but which is pretty opposites of players, but it's yeah, it's just one of those things that like if that's your star player besides probably Aho, and to miss that, any team that missing that, obviously you're gonna struggle, but they made the conference final anyway, so it says a lot. But like I said, if they have another injury, even if it's just a second liner or something like that, I don't see the depth completely there to replace it, and that is the worry for this team. But I got nothing else to add there. Top two team in the Metro, probably round two at minimum, just depending on how the playoff structure works in regards to who they verse. Um, because obviously the Metro in the East is so strong that they could probably get kicked out in the first round like Boston, just depending on who they come up against.
well, yeah, I mean, look, at the moment, depending on how it works, but it could be the Rangers. Again, and we know the Rangers are quite a strong side. Um, Columbus is going to be much improved this year. The Penguins are going all out with their off season. So yeah, by no means is it going to be an easy beat in the Eastern Conference or the Metro lineup. So I even if they do finish top, it might be a bit different. Like this year, I felt like when they went up against the Islanders, they were pretty much a shoe-in because the Islanders just were nothing almost last season. Whereas in this season, with the likes of Canes, Devils, Rangers, Columbus, if they can, like I've just got Columbus pegged as a real dark horse to sort of have a
Yeah,
bounce back season, and obviously the Pens. So they're some pretty solid sides, which means that and you've obviously got Ottawa and that you could be facing in a wild card position, even if you do take that first spot. So even as crucial as that top spot in the Metro is, it might not even help. It might not make
yeah. I
your
think it's just
first round
make it
any.
and then go. I don't think it matters where you finish. In a sense,
No,
not
not these days.
nah.
Not these days. They're so strong.
Which is a shame. But yeah,
Mm.
I guess we'll leave it there. Let us know what you think below in the comments of this team if they do win it. Is their window only 2 years? And yeah, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel for more content. We got one more team to cover. That is the Boston, and then we'll be doing some more coverage of hockey, but in the preseason and then during the regular season. But till next time, we'll catch you guys.